Right. So, welcome to another session of Startup Caravan. Today's session is dedicated to travel and tourism so we can get the ins and outs of what the future of this industry looks like in the post COVID times. Lots to discuss and too little time. So, let me get straight to some important introductions. First and foremost, allow me to welcome the speaker of the day, Anshu Gupta. As a speaker, author, marketer, urban farmer, and more, Anshu Gupta wears many hats. Founder of One Shoe Trust for Responsible and Mindful Travels, she is also the COO at Pinstorm Technologies. In the past, she played a very vital role as the brand manager for National Geographic's The History Channel. This traveler, environmentalist, minimalist, and a mother of two has countless achievements to her name. Most, re- most recently, she has been recognized as one of the 50 innovative leaders in sustainable business by World Innovation Congress in 2020. Also in 2019 and 2020, was featured as Women in Travel by Lonely Planet magazine. Also in 2020, she was listed under in 50 under 50 announced by Indian Achievers Club for 2020. And she has been conferred a Woman of Worth Award by World Women Leadership Council in 2021. Welcome, Anshu. It is an absolute pleasure to be hosting you today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Also joining us from the travel industry, we have Reena Sachdev, founder of Travel Arena since 2007 and a member of Wikiflow. They are an all-women team and specialize in signature holidays internationally and within India. True to their motto, their belief behind planning every trip is enhancing experiences for their travelers, be it at a familiar destination or a path unknown. During the pandemic, they had taken the initiative to bring luxurious experiences related to wellness, food, wine, and self care to their clients' homes through various online engaging sessions with hotel partners from across the globe as a give back in these trying times. Welcome, Reena.
Thank you so much.
Finally, we have Archana Khosla Perman. You will be familiar with her name by now. She is a member of Wikiflow and founder partner at Vertices Partners, a Mumbai-based niche boutique law firm in the private equity and venture capital practice for startups. She constantly helps bridge the gap between entrepreneurs and investors for seamless development of women empowerment. She was featured in ALB's Thomson and Reuters 40 under 40 list in the Asia Pacific region and the 40 under 40 Rising Star by Legal Era. Not surprisingly, she also happens to be the force behind this initiative of Startup Caravan that she has spearheaded specifically for new and aspiring entrepreneurs. With that, allow me to invite Archana to introduce the session for today. Over to you.
Thank you, Gauri, for the detailed and warm introductions. A very warm welcome to Anshu, who's an expert in the travel and tourism industry, who's also a dear friend of mine. So I'm personally very excited to have you here today, Anshu. And I'm interested in understanding the perspective around sustainable and green tourism because this is something we hear about a lot, but understand the details of it. And hearing it from the experts would be something which I'm really looking forward to. Travel and tourism, we all know, has definitely been one of the largest industries in India, which has not only helped in getting more and more foreign exchange to the country, but has also helped in terms of generating employment all across. And then the pandemic hit, right? And brought this industry to a near halt. I think one of the more popular realizations in the group consciousness around the world last year was that with the diminishing vehicles and the lesser number of people being on the road, was it that the wildlife showed possible signs of flourishing? Was that a fact or a myth? We all
Is a
received
fact.
forwards of, yeah, correct. And we all received forwards of videos which showed deers trotting on roads where we've never seen them before. And if that's true, it is possibly just one of the positive impacts of the lockdown or of this pandemic. Will travel ever be the same again? I mean, this is a question I always ask myself. If you look at the pre-COVID era, tourist destinations were crumbling under pressure of over-tourism. Like Anshu explained to me, the Venice canals were bursting with large cruise ship onslaught. The pristine Himalayan villages were getting sunk under plastic waste. And with the pandemic, as tourism came to a halt, the nature did get a chance to breathe. Can we as responsible travelers protect the places that we love so much? What role can businesses play in all this? What role can governments play in this? Do we really have to choose between growth and conservation? I think to answer these questions and much more, we have just the right speaker to take us through the key insights into green travel and what the future holds for this industry. And with that, before I pass on the stage to Anshu, I would request Reena to say a few words, being someone who's in the travel industry, though from a different perspective. And if there are certain burning questions, Reena, which you have in mind or you've come across in your interactions with your clients, which you would want Anshu to cover in her talk. So over to you, Reena, and thereafter to Anshu.
I have been, of course, I am from the same space, but definitely a very different segment. And I'm happy to be here today because with the pandemic, a lot of our clients got very aware of their carbon footprints, which they were leaving behind. And a lot of hotels and partners and destinations, we work with tourism boards from all across the world. So they started realizing that, okay, the destinations which have started coming up have been more expensive. People have started realizing that
Sorry,
we need
1
to
minute.
be more aware.
Sorry, Sorry, can I request you to mute everyone else other than who's speaking?
Yes, of course. Just give me a second.
Thank you.
I've actually muted everyone that I could. Right.
Perfect. I think it's fine. Reena, sorry, please go ahead.
I was just checking if I want mute. So the thing is, even with our clients, they've actually started asking us questions with the hotels they're choosing. For example, right now, if you say internationally, Maldives is running or Dubai is running, I'm not going to go into a lot of sustainable tourism with Dubai at the moment, but at least Maldives is really realized. And hotels are promoting themselves that how they're replacing plastic, how they are actually giving back the local community in India when we are selling India for that matter, usage of more organic products, replacing. I mean, a lot has been happening now. So even we, where we did not have to think of all these things, excepting for just a very glamorous holiday, have been forced to happily think about it. So I'm very excited to know more about it, learn more from Anshu's perspective today as to how we can make our clients more aware because they are already interested, which is true.
Superb. With that, over to you, Anshu. We would love to hear from you now.
So I think, thank you everyone. I think we are already opening on a positive note with Reena saying that the clients are more interested in finding out how they can make sure that, at least they are doing their bit in minimizing the carbon footprint. Now, it's very kind of you to introduce me as a travel and tourism expert. I don't consider myself an expert in that sense, but my passion has been travel, and I've been traveling independently for over 20-25 years. uh, when I started working, it was the only thing in my mind. I needed to work so I could fund my travel. It was that kind of a scenario. And uh, you know it's more as a traveler. Whatever I say today, or whatever I'm doing today, it's more from my perspective as a traveler. By God's grace, and thanks to all my employers who have given me leave at the right times. I've traveled to around 85, 90 countries, and seen seen some of the most beautiful places, seen some of the best and some of the worst that the planet has to offer, and been very, very excited about this space, not as a professional, not as a not as somebody who runs a business in the sphere or anything, but just as the consumer. So that's where my expertise comes from. Now, when I'm logging today, I'm in Gulmarg. Yeah, I've been coming to Gulmarg for almost, well, my first trip was about 30 years back, but I've been regularly coming for last 10 years, and I can tell you that this year is a sea change. And as I hear from the local businesses as well, in the last 2 months, they have done so much business that they haven't seen in last 10 years, right? So I mean, if I were to just put it in perspective, basically Gulmarg has received more tourists this year, right after the lockdown, now, than they did in last 10 years. And there were already too many tourists, by the way, in last 10 years as well. So you can understand that while we are all talking about how the pandemic and how this year of lockdown has affected travel industry, what I want to dedicate time today is to more about how we travel, not how much we travel, or not the size of the industry, or not the size of the business and the $1 trillion economy that travel is and all that. But I would like to bring it down to our individual levels, what we do as travelers, or what I do as a business, or at a larger perspective, how the government policies kind of shape that. So before I kind of dive into that, how much time do we have, Archana?
We have 1 hour because we've just started, given the glitches.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right. So what we will do is that I have a few perspectives to share as a traveler. Some few points that I kind of would like businesses to think about, and it's great that stakeholders like Reena are here, and I'm sure maybe some others as well, and also at the policy level, right? So those are the kind of three areas that I would like to touch upon, and then maybe later we can open the floor to everyone and kind of hear from everyone. So before the pandemic started, before let's say if we kind of rewind back to December 2019, right, when everybody was on their New Year breaks, and while there were a little murmurs of something happening in China and some kind of disease, but nobody knew what was really about to happen. At that point of time, travel and tourism industry was on a up and up, right? India was the second highest growth rate, was seeing the second highest growth rate in tourism in the world, right after China. So as Reena can probably ratify, that the whole world was looking towards India as one of the key markets. All the tourism boards, all the country tourism promotion boards, and the country itself to promote domestic tourism at that point of time. And of course, by the time we reached February and March of 2020, everything came to a grinding halt. And travel and tourism was one of the worst hit sectors, obviously, because that's the first thing that you clamp down on. It is not an essential activity. It is not. It is not essential for business. It is not essential for leisure. It is not essential for anything, right? So that was the first thing that was kind of
and
affected.
and because of COVID, it wasn't safe as well to travel. So I think that
Yeah,
added.
yeah. No, nobody knew what was going to happen. So that was the first thing that got hit. But the truth is that before that forced lockdown, there were so many places which were really extremely crumbling under the pressure of tourism. And when I say that, it is something that each one of you must have experienced, if nothing else, at least in terms of the crowd that you see at a place, right? When we all go and we stay in hotels, and we expect full luxury and a treatment that does not leave any stone unturned. So I remember there was a news article from Shimla, where the locals were actually requesting the tourists to not come to Shimla because there was an extreme water shortage situation. Now, what happens is that, when you're living there, you experience water shortage in a different way. And when you've come there as a tourist for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and you're paying so much to a hotel, the hotel will not let you feel that there is a water shortage, right? So what happens that a lot of resources kind of get diverted to the tourists. And this is just one example, but in reality, a lot of places the locals were really really suffering, and we were actually seeing strikes happening in Venice, and there were actually protests where people were stone pelting the tourist buses in Barcelona. In Venice, if some of you been, and there are canals, and there were these boats, the protest boats, which were asking those big cruises who come in the morning and kind of leave hundreds and thousands of travelers in Venice who go back in the evening, and they were used to stand there with placards asking the tourists to go back. And same was the situation in a lot of places, right? The worst hit were the smaller destinations. So for example, if let's say if it's a place like London, or if it's a place like Barcelona, at least there is infrastructure that takes care of a lot of pressure that the travelers bring with them. However, in smaller places like a Gulmarg, for example, where I am right now, or even smaller offbeat places, or the rural tourism places in India, they don't have any infrastructure to take care of the additional pressure on resources that the travelers bring. Now, it's a very tough situation, because obviously the locals want the tourists and we want to go there. We as tourists want to go there. But in our desire to travel to all these places, what we are not realizing is the kind of pressure that we put on the local environment, that we put on the local ecology. And sooner or later, what happens is that the place starts changing. So while we go to a place to appreciate its natural beauty, to appreciate the calm, to appreciate the quietness, to appreciate the escape that it provides us from our regular life, that place's character starts changing and it kind of starts deteriorating. And then over the years, what happens is, if you don't take care of that, if the local government doesn't take care of that, then slowly that place kind deteriorates to such an extent that people then want to move to some other place, right? So in order to make a business out of the travel and tourism of a place, the place deteriorates, the locals suffer, and the travelers then move on somewhere else. Now anybody can see that in the long run, this is not a sustainable model for travel and tourism at all, right? But it's easier said than done. I mean, how do you then solve this problem? Because, for example, if I've gone to a offbeat location where there are not so many tourists, right? And then I put up my pictures and I say that I'm here, and some of my more friends start coming in and they start talking about it, then more people start coming in, then locals start seeing that, okay, this seems to be a great way of earning a little bit more money, then they start developing the tourism infrastructure over there, and then more people start coming in, and then we go the same way, right? So how is it that we can find any kind of balance between growth and conserving a place, right? That was the question that we pretty much started with. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot. Now, I've been doing workshops about how to travel for last 7-8 years in the country. Initially, my focus was on just getting people to travel more, because the way I travel, and how travel can change one person's life if you travel in the right way. I thought it was extremely fulfilling. It allows you to connect with your planet in a very wholesome manner. It allows you to see different cultures. It allows you to meet different people, see different lifestyles, and of course, see how beautiful this planet is and all that. And I thought it was really something that no books can teach you. And uh, it's not an experience that you can get in any other way. So I used to really encourage. Am I audible? Sorry, I just got a message that I'm not audible. Can somebody just confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You are audible. Yeah.
Okay, great. So especially for young women, that used to be one key part of my workshops that I used to do, is that how can young women start traveling alone? Because again, solo travel is something which touches your soul, right? And we can do a different talk on solo travel, and how I think that it kind of changes you from the inside. So I used to do those kind of workshops a lot, and then I realized that while everybody wants to travel and everybody wants to know how to travel better, how to travel cheaper, how to travel longer, because I always used to promote these long travels like I did myself when I just started my career. I just kind of went on a 4-month backpacking trip to Europe. And I mean, once you've done those kind of trips, like a 4-month backpacking trip on the road, after that you can never be the same person again. The person who left home for 4 months and who comes back after that kind of a holiday are two different people. So I realized that one very important realization that the travelers are missing, and especially amongst Indian travelers, is our own impact on the place. So we all know that how the place impacts us, right? And we like the place and we have a good time if we go with family, if we go with friends, if we go alone, whatever it is. Everybody largely, most of the times, comes back very happy from the travels that they've been to, but we hardly ever realize what is the impact that we leave behind. So now if you start peeling these layers, you will see, okay, of course, I'm adding to the economy of the place, right? So that part is taken care of. That when I travel to a place, I add to the economy of a place. So the businesses are happy and the travelers are happy. However, like I said, there are a lot of not so hidden impacts that we leave behind, which we do not connect with, because a lot of us really travel in a bubble, right? We kind of just pick ourselves from one place and go to another place and, do whatever we have to do, experience whatever we have to experience, and come back. We really don't connect to the local nuances in the way that we probably connect with the place that we live in. So we don't know the problems they're facing. We don't know their, lesser known local festivals. Sometimes we don't know enough of their local food also. So for example, it happens a lot, and you go to Spain, and the first things that you want to eat, and everybody knows that, right? And even the businesses there know that people will be asking for sangria and paella, right? And if you start talking to the local restaurant owners over there, and they will tell you that their cuisine is a lot more than just sangria or tapas or paella, right? uh, but we are always kind of at the surface, and we don't really kind of go a little deeper. So so then what I started doing a few years back, when I started my social enterprise, which is called Vanshu Trust for Responsible and Mindful Travels, and I'll come to the name why I chose such a complicated long name, is to just try and get travelers to connect with the places that they are going to in a slightly more wholesome way, right? Wherever you go, even if you go for 2 days, or even if you go for 20 days, 2 months, whatever kind of travel you do, but there are ways in which you can connect with the local place in a much more wholesome manner. So the first thing is about responsible travel, right? uh, Responsible travel puts the onus on the traveler, a little more onus on the traveler than on the business, because you as an individual become responsible for what you do to the place, right? So here in Gulmarg, uh, you go up to the slopes for skiing, and for the skiers comfort and for the tourists comfort, there are lots of these small shack, like stands, where they will sell you packaged goods, like your regulars, your cigarettes, your Maggies, your biscuits, chocolates, right? And guess what happens to all the wrappers? Do you think that these people, make sure that they collect and bring it back with them? Not so much, right? And and just as one individual, as one action that you take, is to say that, okay, at least on the slopes where it is extremely difficult to do any kind of waste collection, forget recycling or anything, at least I'll be a little responsible and not indulge in that activity, right? And there are many steps like that. I mean, again, in our awareness workshops that we do, we actually give like a 20-point program of simple things that you can do to be slightly more responsible. But it all starts with awareness first, right? So to be a responsible traveler, it all starts with awareness first. And that's where the mindfulness comes in. So you have to be a mindful traveler. And when I say mindful traveler, what this means is that you are slightly more conscious of the travel activity that you're taking. It is not just for leisure. Of course, we all go for vacations and we all go for leisure traveling, but you do it with a slight more consciousness of the fact that we are going to see a beautiful place somewhere. We are going to near a beach. We are going to a mountain. We are visiting a historical monument, and you kind of try to make that connection a little deeper, and not just something that you go and then you come back. And the moment you start making those connections, and those connections could be in any form. It could even start with you reading about the place, you reading about the history of the place, you reading about the geography of the place, you reading about local flora, local fauna, things like that, and connecting with the place a little better. And you will see that once you connect with the place, then you start getting a sense of responsibility on your own, right? So when I hear from Reena that more and more people are now asking for green alternatives, or they're slightly more conscious of what happens in the hotel, or how are they recycling their plastic, it is because that kind of awareness is coming in. And that kind of awareness has also come in a lot because of this year of pandemic, right? A lot of people have become very aware, first of all, of the big part that travel was playing in their lives, which is something that they were taking for granted earlier. And now that they've missed it for 1 year, they're slightly more conscious about it. And at least some of them, if not all, some of them are trying to take some steps, right? As an individual, as a traveler, unfortunately, there is only so much that we can do. So the next big stakeholder in this big piece are the businesses, right? Now this is a very tricky one, because if unregulated, I'm sure all of you are professionals here, because being a part of Wikiflow, you know that if we do not regulate sectors, and if we do not regulate industries, things can go haywire very quickly. So if there are tourists coming, and if I have a buck to make, I will make it, and I don't care so much about my footprint or what is my business doing to them. I kid you not, for last 3 days that I've been here, every day I've been stuck in traffic jams. In Gulmarg, in the small place of Gulmarg, there have been traffic jams because there are so many more cars, there are so many more travelers, and the roads are still narrow, and there's a lot of snow on the roads. So obviously there are traffic jams, right? And with each traffic jam, there are tons and tons of polluting fumes that are going out, right? Is it adding to the beauty of the place? Is it adding to the, is it enhancing the place? It won't. And if they do not regulate it, it will ultimately, either the government will have to step in, or people will start finding out different stops, different spots apart from Gulmarg to go for skiing as well. So what happens is that when it comes to businesses, they will not do anything till the time the consumers demand it. So while we as travelers can play very little part in where we are going, because if the hotel is not taking care of its plastic recycling, there's not much that you can do. But if 10 people who are staying in that hotel, they all start asking that question, that how are you recycling the plastic, then they know that their consumers are getting aware. And very soon, if they don't do anything about it, there will be something that they will be left behind in, right? So as travelers, that is a big part that we can play in just asking the right kind of questions and just demanding the right kind of solutions. And again, it brings us back to the same old thing. If you want to demand the right kind of solutions, you have to be aware, you have to be mindful, and you have to be responsible. I mean, I can't imagine any of us going to a place, any place, either in India or abroad, for a holiday, and not saying, what a beautiful place, right? You click immense amount of pictures, and all the pictures go up on Facebook, and they really add a positive element to our lives, right? And I would just urge that at that point, if there is a little bit of consciousness that we can all kind of imbibe in ourselves, and say, okay, so how is it that I can leave this place better than what I found it? Okay. And this is the term which is coming into circulation now, which is called regenerative travel. So it is one above responsible, one above sustainable. It is called regenerative travel, wherein the travelers can actually help in regenerating a place, right? While as travelers, we might be, we might be a very small part of the change that can come, but the change will definitely start with us. The businesses will not care till the time we care. And the government, of course, world over, if you see, there are lots of good examples and there are a lot of bad examples. uh, Maldives as a country, and I bring up this example because Gina mentioned it as well, is one of the first countries that will start facing the impact of global warming once the sea levels start rising. We all know Maldives is just a collection of islands, and in some of the islands are actually even below sea level. So if the sea level starts rising by 5 inches, 6 inches, however much, they are in extreme danger of the entire country actually getting wiped off, right? And also travel and tourism is one of the biggest earners for their economy. So now you see, there's a very fine balance that they have to manage between how many planes land there, how many people come there, what kind of electricity is being used, how much of plastic is being used. And they're actually doing a phenomenal job of it. I mean, they're trying to do the best that that country can do in terms of minimizing the footprints that the travelers bring in. And at the same time, sorry, somebody trying to say something. Okay. So Maldives is actually a good example. One of the best examples is from Costa Rica. Keeps winning awards left, right, and center in every single every single yardstick that there is. In India, Kerala has been doing a good job in terms of running sustainable travel programs. And there are many, many more examples. There are, like I said, there are some places and some countries who are doing it right. And there's some places, some countries who really need to get their act together. And sadly, a lot of destinations in India fall in the second category. Given that we are the second largest market in terms of travel and tourism. I think if we can make the Indian citizen aware about this whole problem, about this whole situation, and if we can, make sure that all of our travelers are responsible and aware travelers, I think there is a big sea change that we can bring, not just in our country, but also in the whole world. Because again, all of us are traveling abroad all the time. Again, we are a very big market, and uh, a lot of Indians are traveling to every single country. And uh, while we are notorious as of now, we don't have a very good name as of now. But I think if we can create this awareness, if we can um, make more and more travelers aware of what their responsibility, I think it's one of the flags. We can pretty much be the flag bearers of this change. So uh, how the future of travel will be, well, I remain optimistic. I remain optimistic. But like I said, there are three large stakeholders, which means the travelers and the businesses and the governments, who will have to work a lot together in tandem to make sure that this time when travel comes up, and trust me, from whatever I've been reading, from whatever I've been experiencing so far, the numbers are coming back up pretty quickly. Of course, barring, if there is a second wave or a third wave, and if something like that doesn't happen again, the numbers are going to be even higher than what was projected for 2021 before pandemic. So all the more reason, and all the more the urgency of making sure that we as travelers are responsible. We increase the awareness about responsible traveling. We as businesses are even more responsible and even more aware of how we can give greener solutions to the travelers, to our consumers. So that's where I would like to stop for now and see if there are any questions, any comments, and we can take this discussion forward.
Archana, can I? Hi, this is Malu here. Anshu, thank you. That was
Hi,
that
Malu.
was lovely. Two questions. I mean, it's more of a thought than a question. One is you
Sure.
did mention about the going to roadless travel. What happens to most of us? You've traveled 17 countries, so it's like for you want to look into newer places. For us, we still have a tick box of some of the more important things to look at, or the 40 places to see before you're 40, or 50 places to see before you're 50. So I guess once we do that, and I guess that's when we say, okay, now I've done my checklist, I will move into places that are, the unknown territories, and move into it. So wanted to know your thoughts on that. And the second one is, you did talk about our responsibility as travelers, but what is the responsibility of maybe a nation, or including citizens, in terms of, in India, there are such beautiful places, we don't have the infrastructure. Basic things like bathrooms, or even the safety, are two key areas when it comes to travel. How do we address that? Because I fully understand when you talk about sustainability and talk being a responsible traveler. But having said that, how do we attract people here? Because these are two areas that stop people from coming and looking at all the beautiful places that we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Malu, for asking those questions. Very, very pertinent. And, as I was mentioning earlier, that the workshops that I do, or the programs that I run, the awareness programs that I run, are all B2C, which means that I end up talking to the end users, the travelers, a lot. And to answer in one line first, the answer to both your questions is actually one, which is that we need to change the way we travel. Okay, and I'll explain that to you. I didn't take all that up because, we were discussing slightly different thing, more from an ecosystem point of view. Now, for your first question, which is that, as a traveler, I first want to do the top 10, right? So let me ask you, when we travel to, let's say, a country like France, right? What is it that we are going to France for? What are your key things that you want to take away from that place, or what is it that you want to achieve when you travel to France?
I guess the usual sightseeing. You want to go to Paris, you want to look at the Eiffel Tower, you want to finish that. Having said that, yes, I mean, I agree with you. Maybe, in terms of looking at it from a local's perspective, understanding what it is, but we still want to tick off those main things. And with limited number of time or limited budget, you want to finish that. So coming to
Yeah.
your stage of traveling would probably take some more time, wouldn't it?
No, actually, it's the opposite, and that's what I try to try to kind of at least uh, tell people. You see, what happens in let me give you an example from television industry. Okay, what happens in television is I used to run a television channel, and you don't have the budgets to promote every single program that you have on your channel, right? So what you do is you take the two strongest program, like a KBC or like the IPL or whatever is your strongest property you think, and just promote the hell out of it, right? Because you want the maximum number of people to come there, because there is no way you can promote each and every program.
Yeah.
And in a lot of businesses, this is the model that works, right? If you ask people in my workshop, we talk about, okay, what is the best time to travel somewhere? Okay, and people say that what is the best season to travel somewhere? And invariably the seasons that will come up will be the two holiday seasons, the summer holidays or the winter holidays, that kind of a thing, right? And again promoted like that by the people, because they know that that is when the people can travel, people with families, in their school holidays. But in reality, if you ask me today, especially in these times, those are some of the worst times to travel because of the kind of traffic, right? Because of the kind of crowd that you see there. The only good times to travel are like either off seasons or at best shoulder seasons, right? But because you're working on this, in the bell curve, you're working on the fattest part of the bell curve. That's how it works out. So if you see, this is the funda behind the mega cities. So why Paris is a mega city and Mumbai is a mega city and Delhi is a mega city? Because everything seems to concentrate at one place, because it's easy to operate like that. It's easy to promote like that. It's easy, the connectivity is like that. The big airports are like that. Everything is like that. But the truth is that the top 10 places are the places where you can never get the real flavor of that country or of that culture. And you can see it time after time after time, wherever you go, whichever country you go, whichever destination you go. Paris, for example, is as cosmopolitan as any other big city in the world today, right? What you, of course, I mean, apart from the fact that, they speak a different language and there are different kind of people, of course, given all that. But you see, your experience in a place like Bangkok, your experience in a place like Tokyo, or experience in a place like Mumbai, they're pretty much the same. You're like out on the road, there's crowd, they're big cities. It's pretty much the same, right? The real flavor of any country, the real flavor, the real culture, the real connect that you can make is always in the smaller towns. Now, you're also right that maybe this is the next level of travel and not the first level. So the first level, people will still do Paris and they will still do London and all that. And after that, they will start looking at, the smaller places or the lesser travel places. But what if we flipped it on its head? What if we said that, okay, if I really want to see the British countryside, I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get that in London at all, right? You'll have to travel outside London, for an hour or 2 hours outside London to start getting that feel a little bit. Now, a lot of these countries are realizing that. So if you speak to France Tourism Promotion Board, their whole program for last few years has been how to dissipate the travelers from the big cities to some of the other cities, because every place has its own uniqueness. Every place has something which is charming. It's just that because it's been years and years and years of talking like that, promoting like that, and of course infrastructure facilities that puts so much pressure on Paris. But what is happening is neither the Parisians are enjoying it, neither are the travelers from other places enjoying it, because it's become so crowded. You're right that top 10 tick and everything remains important, but I feel it's a dialogue that we have to start. It's a change that we have to start, right? That if you really want to experience a place, go in off season, go in smaller places, stay in lesser known places. I mean, I always say in my workshop, please don't eat at any of the restaurants which are near the touristy places, because they all serve what is called the tourist menu, right? Because they already know what kind of food the tourists will like and they will ask for. You're never going to get the authentic, the authentic flavors there. So it's a change which is needed. It's a change which will come, and again, it's a change that the tourism promotion boards, the government policies, the businesses, everybody working together will bring. it does happen in some places. It's already happening. For example, I've seen that Croatia, when they started promoting tourism in Croatia, they already started with this fact. They were already aware what will happen if they only promote Dubrovnik. It's a very small country. And if they only promote Dubrovnik, or if they only promote Zagreb, they already knew what's going to happen. So right from the beginning, they were trying to promote very, very small destinations as well. So, and then the way it works is then, the travel agents make a itinerary in a certain kind of a way, and then they sell it in a certain kind of way. So, but all that is also decreasing, because now people are not so dependent on packages. People are making their own itineraries, they're booking their own itineraries, and they all want to do something different, right? So I'm hoping that, sooner rather than later, these kind of changes will start coming. It is actually very important. It's not even about if we like it like that, but it is important for us to do that. We can't have just 12 cities in India taking all the tourist pressure. It is, it's logistically a nightmare. So we do need to develop 25 more places and things like that. And you will see the government is doing a lot to build up like that. Your second question about asking more people to come to India, or even Indians traveling more within India with lack of infrastructure, lack of safety, lack of roads, how do we travel that? Now that, of course, some amount of connectivity and some amount of infrastructure is needed. Clean bathrooms and all is, I think, a given these days. It's not even a luxury, right? I mean, it's a given, and you expect that. And I think that kind of consciousness is coming in slowly, because I travel to a lot of smaller places, interior places in India, and I'm seeing a certain change. That kind of sensibility is definitely coming in. It's also coming in because a lot more people are also traveling to these small places now. So, again, when they go, they ask, they ask for the things that are needed, and people kind of try to build that. So a long way to go, but I see positive initiatives from the local businesses and from the Indian government, both on that front.
Thank you, Anshu.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Anshu, tell me something, considering the fact that I often do more luxury travel. So we also, obviously, we are quite related to known brands for that matter. So when it comes to the path less traveled, or like Atu France, you're rightly saying that for the past few years, they've been talking about cities which are so. First, they actually blew Paris out of proportion by making it really famous, by
Yeah.
bringing the crowd there, and then talking about places like Amiens and Reims and Lille and Rouen, which
Yeah.
are like, and they market it like this is 45 minutes away from Paris, this is 1 hour away from Paris. So Paris is used as the epicenter to then highlight it, like, the rays of the sun, basically. That, okay,
Yeah.
now you can
Yeah.
go here. That's what we do from Milan, like we do Bergamo or Veneto, and so many different, like Venice. For the longest time, since the time I first went to Venice, I stopped sending people to stay there. I said, listen, you can
Yeah.
just go there for a day and come back. You don't
Yeah.
need to stay there. The city people don't have water for themselves. So
Yeah.
easily from Milan, you can go there for 1.5 hours or something. Instead, I would base them somewhere better, or
Right.
take them down south to Puglia or to Amalfi or something. But in India, we still need a little bit support with the brands. For example, like Taj has come up with Ama Stays, which is a division of Taj, but these are privately owned homes where, a cricketer or a Bollywood star or some rich industrialists had kept it as like his extra home. And in the pandemic, they realized that obviously people are scared to go to crowded places. So why not just give out our homes as villas?
Yeah.
Of course, people started doing that on regular basis also, but this time they started attaching themselves to a brand, because then
Right.
your basics of a clean toilet or a clean your food, good food and all are sorted.
Yeah.
Because once you say that Ama by Taj, the price is
Yeah.
not a Taj price, the price is the proper villa price, but the amenities are definitely to the T, because it's managed by Taj.
It's a Taj.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a Taj. So, but you're not paying as much. And there are all private villas, like 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, and they're right now all over there. I mean, they've just opened up in Lonavala for Bombay, so it's even
Yeah.
better. And we've already got one in Maryland also. So, how do you think that when you say brands and businesses, do you think that even the the luxury chains will have a big impact if they do things like these?
No, absolutely. See, there are two things here. One is the decentralization of the travel business, and
Correct.
you would know this better, that the earlier model is kind of becoming very defragmented now, right? and especially with the kind of facilities that are coming in form of Airbnb, or even some of these chains like Oyo, or lots of other chains which are coming in. It's very decentralized. It is not just about 5 6 big brands kind of trying to do everything on their own. So which means
Right.
that anybody, any of us over here, can actually find a person in a remote village outside of Goa, right, who is willing to give 2 rooms in his house, right? Earlier it was almost impossible. I mean, there was no connection between these two parties, right? It was almost impossible. And today it is almost like a given. I mean, I think people who are very used to that kind of booking and all, they don't even think twice about it, and they know that wherever they go in the world. I mean, I've had friends who have even gone to see northern lights in Norway and Sweden, and stayed in Airbnb in villages which are only 20 houses, only 20
Hmm.
houses in that village, out of which, let's say, 2 people are running Airbnb over there. And we sitting over here in Mumbai are able to find them, right? Earlier it was impossible to do. Northern lights used to be like once in a lifetime, if God is luck, if God is kind, that sort of a thing, right? So first of all, this whole travel paradigm is very, very democratized, is very, very defragmented today, right?
Right.
On top of that, if there are brands like Taj who are willing to consolidate some part of this defragmented chain and brand it, it's a huge market opportunity. Of course, Taj is Taj, but let's say there are smaller brands like a Saffron Stays, for example, right? And there are so many other brands who are basically, what they're saying is that if it has this stamp, then you can be at least guaranteed of a certain, like what Oyo did, right? Oyo did it in the totally C category hotels first, and then moved up. So it's a big business opportunity, it's a big market opportunity. And every time an economy which is being held by 5 large brands, it opens up in a way that it gives way to 50 more brands to come in, or 500 more brands to come in. You can imagine the kind of explosion in the market
Yes.
that is just waiting
Yeah.
to happen, right? And it will definitely happen more and more in India, more and more. I mean, there are so many brands that I see, which I mean, see, I'm an avid traveler, but it's not like I'm aware of all the brands, right? So every time I have to go somewhere, I start doing a research, and every time I go there, I'm so pleasantly surprised to see that there are so many options available where I can be reliably sure that I will not have a bad time, right? It will be decent. I'm not a very high end luxury travel, so I don't go out looking for that. But for me, if I can connect, if I can stay in somebody's house, or one of those things, those are far more exciting for me, right? And my safety is taken care of, and my basic needs are taken care of. And I just think, given the size of our country, I
Yeah.
mean, 20 years from now, I'm sure we will see so many more chains and so many more branded hospitality chains that we see today.
Yeah. That's a good one.
But I wanted to I want Reena, I wanted to also talk to you about the other onus that these big brands can take is
Hmm.
definitely in bringing the sustainability angle a little more. I think they're not talking enough about it. Some of them are doing some things, some of them are not, but they're definitely not talking much about it. And I think a brand like Taj, or even some of the other bigger brands, they can really set the gold standard there. If they really take it up as, and I've seen it in some hotels in Singapore, for example, and they're really hardcore, right? I mean, they will not, even if you ask for a mineral water bottle, they will not serve you that, right? I mean, it's like we don't serve plastic water bottles. So some of them are pretty hardcore about it. And I think in India, people are just waiting for somebody else to make the first move, and it's like they're still kind of holding themselves back. I mean, these big luxury hotels, the big chains, can really take the leadership role there, and actually start with so many initiatives, which can then force the smaller ones also to follow them. But I think, as most of the cases in India, everybody's like waiting, who makes the first move.
No, but I think we have a lot of hotels which are getting encouraged by, like, for example, when you say a brand like Soneva, Soneva is completely into sustainable travel, giving back the community. They openly claim that whatever their earnings are, and it's an expensive brand. I mean, even a Taj doesn't come anywhere close to what you pay for a Soneva per night, no matter which Soneva you go to. And if the owner is very clear, he actually only, if you see every email of theirs, they were the first, one of the first brands to say that please do not print our emails. Don't use paper, don't waste paper. And they've never been into plastic. It's always going to be glass bottles where they give you water in. And they're even the electricity, they actually show that how through manure they are producing electricity. And even Taj with Ama stays, the reason why I mentioned Ama is because I didn't speak about the main Taj hotels, because you're right now their focus is just about getting the business back up on its feet rather than talking about sustainability. But with Ama they are able to do that, because when they're doing that, these are local homes which were owned by your cricketers or celebs or industrialists or whatever, but they're always talking about organic food. Like I went to Aman Bagh in close to Jaipur in December, and the food is grown organic, local food is grown, and they are okay to tell you that look, this is not just because it's a 5-star does not mean that there could be something that is not available to you. Yeah, this particular thing is not available to you because I'm in Rajasthan, I am in this particular surrounding, and it doesn't suit here. But having said that, what you are getting is far more nutritious because it's grown right here compared to what you probably get in another 5-star or a city hotel. So I feel now slowly the brands, but Aman is not an Indian brand, but still they are in India. So if they are doing this, slowly everybody else will follow suit. I mean, that's what I hope for.
No, it's one of my pet peeves. I mean, if you go to Ladakh, and if you start climbing up, and if you go to Somoriri Lake, and if you go to some of these really really fragile ecosystems. And when I say fragile, I mean I am already the kind of vehicles which are going in already must be kind of disturbing that fragile ecosystem. And there you go where nothing grows. It's like a desert. And just to cater to the tourists, they have to open dhabas there, and they have to serve your aloo parathas and everything, because that's what the tourists want. I think it's really it's very painful to see, because in order to serve the customer, because the customer is always king, right? So in order to serve the customer, the businesses go out of their way. And because they don't see the impact, I mean, they don't see the carbon footprint of you know giving an aloo paratha at Somoriri Lake, right? Uh, uh, you know, and nobody talks about that, right? But it's great that if a brand like Aman starts talking about it, hopefully there will be a trickle down effect. And if we run enough awareness programs for tourists and all that, I hope that we reach a stage wherein somebody who's going to Somoriri Lake will not ask for an aloo paratha there, right? So these are big changes that we can only hope, and hope that they don't take so many years, because I don't think we have too many years left to do the kind of things that we have been doing in the past.
But the pandemic sped this up, so I think we will not need too many years, because people have become like even if the brand doesn't take any initiative, the locals, the people, the tourists have become more aware of it. They are happy when they see on the towel it's written that please don't put the towel for washing every day, because that's what normally every 5-star expects you to do. But people are getting a little bit more aware. Clients are realizing that okay, they can do their own bit. So I think it's just educating the people. The brands will eventually follow. It's about consumer demand at the end of the day. What the consumer
Exactly.
what you give.
Exactly. Cool. Any other comments, feedback? Archana, you're on mute. Sorry, I think you're trying to say something.
Yeah. So Anshu, there's some questions coming from the younger women. And basically it's not related to the sustainable bit, but more about from a women travel perspective. And this probably Reena and you both can give a perspective on this. So you did your first travel at the age of 20, right? You were very young that time, and travel was clearly a passion. So now when we talk about women doing solo travels, we do still hear safety concerns. And as I said, especially for the younger women, do you think women do face issues when it comes to exercising their passion? What would be your advice for them?
Let's not make any bones about it. Absolutely, women do face certain kind of issues that men don't have to, all over the world, anywhere.
Correct.
Okay. So my advice to Indian women traveling anywhere, either within India or abroad, is always this: that always be on your guard, just like you're on your guard when you're at home, right? When you're within India. So don't do the things that you wouldn't typically do over here, right? I mean, don't don't get over friendly with strangers. Don't start giving out your hotel addresses and start inviting people to your rooms, or don't wear too much jewelry, or don't get drunk and dance in the street and things like that, right? So absolutely they have to be on the guard. But that said, it's not like that the whole world is out to get you. So it's not like that the places that you're going to are like landmines, and it's not that. The whole world is equally safe and equally unsafe. That's what I would say. We still hear cases, and recently I was reading about this young girl in UK who disappeared, and how all the women were sharing that everything, given every, and this is UK, right? I mean, given everything, they still have to be, even if they're walking back from college to home, which is a route that they always take, if they're traveling, if they're walking alone, they have to be careful, right? So I think it is unfortunate that as for our gender, that we have to be careful. But yeah, but like I said, there's no need to be overly anxious about it. Okay. And by that logic, even men traveling alone can face hazardous situations, right? So what I always say is that practice the same kind of vigil, and practice the same kind of common sense that you practice at home. I think the bigger problem is, and from at least from what I've heard in my workshops, is young ladies trying to convince their parents. And because it's the parents who are always more worried about their safety than they themselves are, right? So I think that a little bit is probably parental concern. And secondly, especially to very young girls, I always tell them, I said, you have to make sure that you are instilling confidence in your parents. If they see that you can't handle yourself well over here, then how will they know, how will they get this confidence that you will be able to handle yourself when you're traveling alone or with a friend in a country abroad? So act responsibly, and make sure that your parents are confident that you will be able to take care of whatever happens, right? So that's what is my take on that.
Perfect.
I agree, because it could be as unsafe even for the men. It's just that for women, it's highlighted a bit more because we happen to be the fairer sex. And I don't like appearing weak like that, because I was 13 or 14 when my dad sent me for my first trip alone. I mean, on a college trip, and on my own, I started traveling at 20 alone. And but yeah, if talking about being safe, like what Anshu rightly said, first you need to show your responsibility here, because depends on how you behave here is how you're going to behave when you're out there. And obviously, if I'm going to wear all my solitaires and walk around in Johannesburg and I'm mocked, and then tomorrow I cannot say I'm a female traveler and this happened to me. I mean, even a wallet would be snatched from a man. And I've so far been to 52 countries, and every country averaged twice or thrice for sure. And I have done everything that I think a guy would have done. I've been to a pub by myself. I've been to, always eating on my own, done sightseeing alone because my work takes me. But I've known when to do what. I mean, if I am going to a pub and I really want to go in Budapest, it has to be right next to the hotel that I'm staying in, so that in the night, and I don't have to come back at 1 or 2 by myself, because definitely I'm not a guy. So you just need to understand, some women go in that rebel sense that, oh no, it's okay, I'm alone, I'm going out, but I've taken this trip, I need to do it. No, I mean, you have ways to enjoy in a mature way also, so that you keep doing it forever and don't have a bad experience which discourages you to go somewhere again. It's not that important. So you just need to know how to handle yourself in every situation. I cannot be drinking there like the way I drink in a house party out here. So I mean, these are basics, and that is your overall behavior here. So I think it's good, because you will overall become more mature and responsible in your generic living here, which will ensure you to anyways travel better, enjoy the place much better. So safety, no, never faced it, never till date. In 20 years, I haven't seen it. Never a problem.
I think as long as one
That
takes,
said,
yeah. And I think what you said in terms of the parental aspect becomes most important, because convincing parents at a younger age, and that's where instilling confidence becomes very important.
Exactly. And I was just saying that said, we know that there are some places where these things are more rampant. And I don't mean in terms of, gender-based stuff, but I mean, in Paris, it's a given. I mean, all the tourists know that, something will be snatched at some point of time, right? I mean, in Rome and Paris, it's a given. When you land somewhere in Rajasthan, that you will be mobbed by the people trying to sell you different kind of hotel and taxi and this and that, and there'll be like a swarm of people. These things are given. I mean, the more you're aware of about it, the better you'll be able to handle it.
Perfect. Gauri, do we have any further questions?
Although
Yeah.
Archana, although I do want to add one more thing, is that especially for younger women, if you do want to travel alone, I would say that please start from Europe. I think there is this sense that let's do Southeast Asia first and then we will go to Europe, or let's do India first and then we will. I think, and this is from my own personal experience, is that if you, especially as a single woman traveling alone, or maybe two of you or something, a small group, then if you start traveling in Europe, there are two, three things. First of all, obviously, you won't face the kind of discrimination that you face in a lot of Indian places. Secondly, the travel ecosystem over there is very well built. I mean, Europeans have been traveling at a young age alone for a very long time. It's a way of life over there, especially in Scandinavian countries, and it's a way of life that the young people have to travel. So their trains and their hostels and the whole ecosystem is built like that, right? So it's actually much easier, much safer, much more convenient for young women, and also for young men, for young women to take that as first experience, rather than trying to take baby steps. Okay, let's just go to Thailand first, or let's just go to Bali first. You don't have to do that. Just straight away do Europe. It's the easiest.
I completely agree. That was my first trip as well, when I was like probably
Yeah.
13 or 14.
I actually agree with both of you. So I am a person who has traveled overseas quite extensively, and I would have to say that traveling overseas alone is easier than, at least in my head, it is easier than traveling in India. So actually, let me take this opportunity to prod your head about. I am someone who has come back to the country after, say, 10 years abroad. Not 10 years, but I'm coming back to Bombay after 10 years, but I am coming back from UK after 4 years. And I am somebody who wants to explore India much more, because sadly, as of now, the southernmost tip that I've been to is Goa, which is really sad. So I want to change that. What is your advice for me? Because I don't know if meetup groups work in India. I don't know if travel groups work in India. So if you could, what is your advice to somebody like me who definitely wants to explore this more?
There are lots of travel groups, first of all, but I'm always a firm believer of solo travel. So I will always advise you that, if you've already done it, it's not something that is difficult for you to do. So maybe you, or maybe one more friend. The problem, the reason why I advise solo travel is not because of, some very big thing that I have, whatever. The thing is that when you're traveling in a group of two, or in a group of four, or a larger group, you will never look at the outside place with the same eyes. You will always be talking about something. There will always be things to talk about, and you will always be kind of engaged with each other, right? So yes, you are traveling, but you will miss out a lot of nuances. Whereas if you're traveling alone, all six senses are working in, like, you're fully aware. Your eyes are seeing everything, your ears are hearing everything, you're smelling everything, and especially as a woman, right? Because you also have to be kind of alert. So what you notice when you travel solo is absolutely unmatched when you travel even with one more person. Okay, so that's the reason why I will, even though there are travel groups, and I can introduce you to quite a few, you will find them on Facebook. There are lots of them actually. But I have to tell you that if the southernmost place that you've been to, Goa, then you are missing out on a treasure trove in this country, which is the southern India. Okay, and I will tell you, my eyes popped open when I visited the Tamil Nadu. And Kerala, of course, is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, God's own country is the apt title for that state. Okay, it's beautiful. But apart from that, the kind of culture that you will see in Tamil Nadu is amazing. The kind of temples. I mean, I'm not a very religious person or anything, but the kind of temples that you see and the kind of stories and the history, which I'm sure we all read in our schools, but we forget, right? Chola kingdom and Chalukyas and this and that, we all forget that, right? But when you go and see there, if you're not from south of India, and your first trip to places like Tanjavur and Tiruchirappalli and all these, all the places, I'm telling you, your mind will be blown. Okay, so definitely put that in your itinerary. And yeah, I think India has immense amount of tourism potential. We are just not we've touched the tip of it, but it's amazing. So if you're willing to discover the country, you will have a great time.
No, absolutely. So I generally agree with you with the solo travel thing, because overseas, that's all that I've done. And I know exactly what you mean when you say that you are all on alert. So you basically take in everything that
Yeah.
you're coming across, and it's much more of a perspective building thing then as compared to when you travel in groups. So, okay, another question, because logistically organizing trips overseas is also fairly easy. Do we have something like couch surfing in India, or
Yeah.
does that
Yeah, we do.
we do?
There are couch surfers all over India. There is Airbnb all over India now. Um, and the thing is, even the hotels in India are not that expensive, right? I mean,
Right.
at least abroad, couch surfing and all came about because the hotels are quite expensive.
Very
Here
expensive.
it's not the case, but still, I mean, couch surfing is a great experience. The only thing which I miss in India, which I really liked in US and European countries, is this nice concept of youth hostels. uh,
Yes.
so that is one thing I miss here. but
Mm.
but I think pretty much couch surfing and Airbnb can make up for it a lot. So also you can try this other site called Hostel World. They also
Okay.
have some nice small properties. Hostel World is actually about youth hostels, but because in India there are not that many youth hostels, so they have different kind of properties there.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And I am sure that I will probably prod you more for these trips and tricks in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. There's one more thing that I always tell people, that traveling for work, traveling to meet family, traveling for destination weddings, or things like that. Uh, uh, it's not the same as traveling for the sake of traveling, right? I'm sure Reena would vouch for that. I mean, I have so many friends in travel industry, right? And they're all traveling all the time, and some of them are handling some very very exotic locations like Uzbekistan and all that. And they would probably be traveling to these places, Armenia and all, 4 times a year or 6 times a year, where many people don't even get to travel in their whole lifetime, right? But it's not the same. It's not the same. And you can speak to any travel professional, any airlines professional, anybody who travels for work. It's not the same. Of course, it is great. Of course, there is a lot of fun. I mean, my cousin who flies, and every time he crosses the pole, and he sends me pictures from the aircraft and all. It's amazing. I think it's one of the perks of their job, that they get to see all that. But traveling for the sake of traveling is something different. When you're out on the road, just because you're on the journey, right? It's not because you're trying to get from point A to point B for some work, for some meeting. There's a wedding in the family, or somebody has shifted to, now my sister lives in Calgary, Canada, so have a great opportunity to visit her. Of course you will have a good time, but finding places where there's no objective for you to travel, apart from the fact that you're going to see that place, you're going to experience that place, is something else altogether.
If I could just add to that, I completely second your perspective. I feel like our perspectives actually match quite a lot. So what I meant by traveling for work is that I always had a purpose of being in the other country. So because of that, I find that I was able to culturally immerse myself much more than I would have as a pure tourist. So I'll give you an example. I was in South Africa through this organization called ISEC, which does youth
Yeah.
internship programs. So you are aware. And I had gone over to South Africa. It's a not-for-profit organization. I'd gone over to South Africa to head their South African chapter, which was such a new experience. And I feel like if through travel industry somehow we could sort of encourage that more in India, because we have a lot of cultural exchange programs in other countries, which is far easier to organize, especially when you're students, when you need to build on your perspective. If, in fact, if you could give us some perspective on the kind of updates that, if at all, they are coming in India in this front as well, that would be great. Because again, in UK, I ended up staying back for 4 years. I was there as a student. Again, I had a purpose to actually mingle, and I ended up taking a side job. And that side job, as much as I interacted with British people over there through that side job, I could not do it in my international class, because it was all Europeans, which is Greek, Italian, and then Canadian people, and then Indian and Chinese. So to get that slice of British culture, I had to actually join a job. So that's
Exactly.
what I meant. Yes. So
Exactly.
if you could just tell us a bit more.
There are a lot of exchange programs, but again, India is such a vast country that for anything to become noticeable, you need a lot of it. So there are, apart from ISEC, there are quite a few organizations who also run exchange programs of various kinds of scholarships. Various kind of embassies have different kind of programs. So somebody who's keen on it can find lots of things to do. But again, I would say it's an opportunity. It's a market opportunity. I was at a travel show in London, and I met this small business. And what they do is that they take grade 8 and grade 9 students for exchange. Now, this is not a category that is typically, a part of ISEC. Is like for slightly older students and all that. And what they make sure is that your child who's in grade 7 or grade 8 gets to stay with a family who also has a child in grade 7 or grade 8. So it's like, it's like at that age, you kind of get exposed to another culture, another way of living. So yeah, these kind of businesses, first they will be offbeat small businesses, and then somebody will need to create like a marketing opportunity out of it, and it will become big. So I know there is some action happening. Also the other change which I've seen in Indian market is that a lot of young students are now going abroad for studies, which was not the case earlier, right? So that market is also opening up. So not just post grads and not just graduations, but even for your younger, like grade 11, grade 12 kids are now going abroad to study that, right? So that's also kind of a cultural exchange. And again, I always tell that, don't travel like a tourist. I mean, even if you're going for 2 days, try to do things that local people do, Of course, the best thing is to kind of go and stay there for like 7 days, 10 days, 15 days, whatever it is that you can manage. And that is the big difference between, typically what the books will say between tourist and a traveler, right? A tourist will go touch the place, come back.
Yeah,
Right?
I just hear that. Yeah, you should get the feel of that's very important.
But the feel of the place can only come when you do the things that locals do. So for example, if you're in Paris, and if you only spend your days in museums and in Eiffel Towers and all that, the locals never do that.
Correct.
It's like people in Bombay, how many times do you go to see Gateway of India? Never, right? Almost never, right?
It's like in Switzerland, when I went there first, I went to Jungfrau Joch, and all the locals there were like, we've never been there. And I have a lot of over in Switzerland. Like, we've never been there, but anyway, you tell us how it was. So I think it's one of those.
Yeah. So it's exactly one of those things. You can, I don't know what is a chicken, what is the egg over here, but the locals don't go to the touristy places, right? So and again, this is the thing that I always want to do when I travel somewhere, is I don't want to do the touristy things. So I remember the first time I was in Paris, okay, and as it is, there's always a queue outside Louvre and all that. So in any case, I mean, I didn't want to do that. But seriously, I mean, my point was that, it's too touristy for me. That's not what I want to do. I will probably do it the third time when I come to Paris, if I come to Paris the third time. But this time I want to, go to the small places. I want to hang out where the local people hang out after office hours. That kind of a thing. Like, and I will always kind of ask the, whoever I find, that where do you take your family for your special lunches, special meals, special dinners? And that's where you get the names of the places that you will not find in any guidebook or any Lonely Planets or anything at all, right? So you go to small shops, you try to buy the things that they buy, you try to, at least in whatever little way that you can, you at least try to live the way that the locals do. They travel in local trains. You also travel in local trains. Unless you do that, you don't get that flavor.
What a brilliant thought to actually bring our session on to an end. Until you travel as a local, you don't really get that flavor. Thank you so much for coming in, Anshu. Thank you so much for this session. I would like to invite Reena to extend a note of thanks, and we can take it from there.
Thank you. I learned a lot more, Anshu. So I'll be a little bit more cautious about where my travelers want to go now onwards. But the only thing that honestly I took back, being selfish, is that we're going to be back with a bang, bigger than our demand was anticipated in 2021. So that was the best part of the session for me today. But I'll be in touch with you as well. And this was very
Absolutely.
informative for me as well. So thank you so much to Archana, to Malu, to have me as a part of this. And I'm looking forward to more of such sessions in the future.
It's fully my pleasure. Totally. I love talking travel. I can talk travel endlessly. So it's always a good thing. So thank you so much, Archana, for giving me this forum, and thanks to all of you for being patient and listening.
Thank you so much, Anshu, for being here. In fact, in spite of being on your travel, right now you're traveling, you're in a beautiful place, and I'm holding you back from there. Thank you so much for making yourself available. And thank you, Reena, for giving us all the perspectives which you did. And thanks a lot, Gauri, for helping organize and giving your perspective as well.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, see you then.
Okay.
Bye.
See you guys soon then. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.